What if the biggest contract of your life didn't involve companies, figures, or power, but the love you spent your whole life trying to avoid? Mark had it all: wealth, prestige, absolute control. But one night, a stray glance in the rain would change everything. By offering a cold deal to a stranger with nothing, he never imagined that he was signing up to his own destiny. From the icy silence of a mansion to the cry of three hearts beating at the same time, this story proves that love can be born in the most unlikely places, even when it's forbidden on paper. But is it possible to love when everything is built on clauses? Find out now, because some decisions, even coldly calculated ones, have the power to change an entire life. The room was plunged into silence except for the distant sound of the rain hitting the glass. Mark stared out at the city through the panoramic window of his office, glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. The lights of the metropolis danced in golden reflections, but in his eyes there was only emptiness. It wasn't the lack of goals or achievements. It was something else. I have everything, except someone who says, "Dad," truthfully. He said it like he was signing a sentence. The butler, standing discreetly by the door, didn't dare interrupt. He was used to seeing his boss in absolute control, but that sentence echoed differently, as if it had come not from his mouth, but from his gut. Mark stood up and walked slowly over to the bookcase. He looked at the business books, the trophies, the old photos of important meetings, everything catalogued, lined up clean, everything cold. The world revered him, but none of the smiling faces in the photos represented anything lasting. No family, no roots, just contracts. He sat down again and opened the desk drawer. Inside was a picture frame with an old image of his mother holding his hand when he was still a child. He touched the glass. "She's gone and taken with her the last person who loved me, without expecting anything in return." The idea came as a whisper, an heir, a son, but without the risks of love, without fragile promises or emotional alliances. A blood link, that's all. A seed that would bear his name, his essence, and that he would look after with the same dedication with which he built his empire. But no sentimental ties. Mark pulled out his tablet and started researching fertility clinics, donation agencies, any alternative that didn't involve affection. Each option seemed like a potential emotional risk, until a daring thought struck him. What if I found someone outside the system? Someone with nothing, willing to accept anything in exchange for security and comfort? A plan began to form. Rational, objective. He would be the architect of his own continuity, with no room for surprises. "I don't want a wife. I don't want love. I want a son. That's all." He stood up again, now firmly. He walked out onto the balcony. The rain increased, washing the buildings as if to erase something. Below, the city remained impassive, noisy, alive. "It's time to do something really my own," he muttered. "But my way." Behind him, the butler approached cautiously. "Sir, would you like me to prepare the car for tomorrow?" Mark smiled, an almost imperceptible gesture. "Yes. Tomorrow will be a different day." He turned around, looking at the city one last time before turning off the lights. The silence no longer bothered him. For the first time in a long time, there was a purpose. Cold, calculated, but still a purpose. The sky was still grey when Mark got into his car that morning. The driver was waiting silently, and he just gestured with his hand. He had no certain destination. He just wanted to drive around the city, look at unfamiliar faces, immerse himself in the urban chaos that contrasted with the order of his life. He needed to find someone, not just anyone, but someone willing to make an unusual deal. The car slid along the wet streets. The fogged-up windows made the city look like a distant dream. Mark stared at every street corner, every makeshift shelter, every person invisible to the eyes of the world. Then, at the traffic lights of a busy avenue, he saw her. A young woman standing under the marquee of an abandoned store, wet hair, stormy blue eyes. She walked hesitantly to her car and stopped next to the window. With an expression that mixed tiredness and dignity, she held out her hand. "Is there anything that can give me hope again?" she asked, her voice hoarse, almost swallowed up by the noise of the city. Mark stared at her. Her eyes didn't ask for alms. They asked for existence, and that disarmed him for a second. The traffic light changed. He looked away, accelerated. "I can't lose focus now," he muttered to himself. But her eyes remained. Even after turning 2 corners, the stranger's face was still with him. An expression stuck in his mind with a force that defied his cold logic. "Stop the car!" The driver looked at him through the rearview mirror. "Sir, get back. Now!" The car turned around the block. Mark searched anxiously, trying to find that look again. Minutes passed before he saw her again, walking with short steps, shielding herself from the rain with a piece of cardboard. He had the window lowered. "Come in. No questions." The woman hesitated. "I'm not that kind of woman, if that's what you're thinking." "Do you really think I'd be interested in someone like you for that?" Mark replied, without changing his tone. "You're safe. Now get inside or keep walking and sleep another night on the street." She remained motionless for a few seconds, her gaze defiant, but something in her voice spoke more of survival than resistance. Finally, she got into the car, closing the door slowly. Silence enveloped them for a few blocks. Mark watched her out of the corner of his eye. She was young, but her time on the streets had robbed her of years. Her breathing was contained and her fingers trembled slightly. "You didn't ask why I brought you here." "It doesn't matter. Nothing surprises me anymore." Mark leaned back in his seat. "Then maybe you're ready to hear something that will change your life." She stared at him with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. He held her gaze for a few seconds. "I want to make you an offer." Anna pressed her fingers into the worn fabric of her pants as the car drove through the streets in silence. She still couldn't believe she was there, in a luxury car, next to a man whose coldness seemed as solid as marble. The proposal had been echoing in her mind ever since he had said those words in the back seat. "I want to make you a proposal." They arrived at a mansion surrounded by high walls and silence. As they entered, the contrast was stark. From the rough world of the sidewalks to the polished marble, from the cold of homeless nights to the stifling heat of a house where time seemed frozen. Mark led her into a large living room. Without formalities, he pointed to the sofa. He sat down opposite her, crossed his legs, and began as if he were in a business meeting. "I'm going to be straightforward. I don't want a wife. I don't want love. I want a son, an heir." Anna arched her eyebrows. "You want me to be your wife for 9 months? No. Artificial insemination. Nothing physical between us. A contract, total security, medical care, food, clothes, and at the end, a generous sum. You can restart your life wherever you want. Free." She stared at him. "You're trying to buy a life. That sounds more like renting a womb than a contract." "You're right. That's exactly what it is. An agreement. Clean. Rational. No false promises." "And why me?" she asked, her voice firm despite her nervousness. "There are thousands of ways to get it with agencies, clinics, women with CVs, health plans, diplomas. Because you have nothing, and that's why you have nothing to lose. And because your eyes said something that the rest of the world silenced." Anna lowered her gaze for a moment. An almost imperceptible tremor ran through her shoulders. She was used to being invisible, but there, even if for a strange reason, someone could see her. "What if I say yes?" she muttered. "Are you going to turn me into a luxury incubator and then send me away with a check?" "Yes, but with dignity and freedom." Anna laughed sarcastically. "You talk about freedom as if you know what it's like to live without it." Mark leaned forward. "Do you want to die invisible on a sidewalk, or wake up one day safe in the knowledge that you've turned your pain into a future?" She crossed her arms. The world had already taken everything from her. Family, country, identity. This could be the bridge to a new chance. But that wasn't all that bothered her. It was him. The coldness, the absence of soul in his words. And yet, something in his voice made her want to hear more. "I accept, on one condition." Mark arched an eyebrow. "Go ahead. If one day I feel I can't go on, you let me go. No questions asked, no debts, no hunting me down." He smiled for the first time, although it was still a rehearsed gesture. "Done. Get ready, Anna. Your life has just changed." The first few days at the mansion were like walking on glass. Anna woke up to the sound of the team's muffled footsteps, the discreet scent of fresh flowers, and the oppressive silence of impeccable corridors. Nothing was familiar, but everything was functional. New clothes, a room of her own, meals served on time. The comfort was absolute and absolutely cold. Mark kept his distance. The two of them only saw each other at doctor's appointments and meetings with lawyers. The contract was signed in silence. No celebration, no toasts, just pens gliding across paper. Anna, despite her sudden stability, felt like a precious object kept in a display case. She spent hours in the library, one of the few spaces where she felt free. She read books she found by instinct, trying to occupy her time and tame her thoughts. One day, while leafing through an old novel, she heard his voice. "I didn't know you liked reading." Startled, she turned around. Mark was leaning against the door, casual but attentive. "I've learned to like solitude. Books speak when the world is silent." He entered, approaching the shelves. "Solitude is overrated. It only seems comfortable because it doesn't demand answers." Anna stared at him. "What about you, Mark? Have you ever been loved without having to pay for it?" The silence that followed was heavy. He didn't answer immediately. He walked over to an armchair, sat down, and crossed his arms. "Love is a luxury, a risk I didn't give myself the right to take." "Or a fear you've never faced," she retorted, putting the book down. There was a strange moment of connection there, something neither of them was ready to name. Mark's eyes wavered for a moment, but then he looked away, recomposing his posture. "How are you feeling? Any discomfort?" "Apart from being trapped in a marble castle with someone who doesn't smile even by accident, I'm fine," he smiled. "You're sharper than I imagined. And you're more human than you pretend to be." She stood up, closed the book, and walked over to him. He stopped in front of her. "I may not have a degree, Mark, but I know pain when I see it." He looked up, surprised at her boldness. "I'm not here just because I took your money. I'm here because somehow I thought you might need me, too." Mark remained silent. For the first time, he felt that there was something there that money couldn't explain. Anna turned and left the library, leaving him alone with the echo of her words. That night, Mark remained in his living room for hours, staring into the void. Something inside him had been touched. He hated to admit it, but he missed that unexpected presence. The morning light flooded into the office as Anna lay on the gurney, the cold ultrasound gel smeared on her belly. Mark was beside her, stiff, arms crossed. The doctor was adjusting the equipment with the calm of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. For Anna, it was all new. For Mark, it was just another item to check. "Let's see how things are going here," said the doctor with a professional smile. The monitor came to life, and the sound of heartbeats filled the room like a drumbeat in slow motion. Anna's eyes widened. Mark leaned over, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Is that?" Anna asked, her voice trembling. The doctor smiled, pointing at the screen. 1, 2, 3 distinct beats. Anna put her hand to her mouth. 3? Yes, they're triplets. The silence that followed was absolute. Mark, previously a pillar of coldness, let out a slow breath. "That changes everything." Anna was still staring at the screen, tears in her eyes. She didn't know what she was feeling. Was it fear, joy, confusion, all of it? "Are they all right?" she managed to ask. "Perfectly in sync. It's rare but very promising. They're healthy." Mark took 2 steps back and leaned against the wall. The world was spinning at a different speed. He had never planned for this. 1 child, just 1. 3 hearts, 3 lives. 3 versions of something he didn't even know how to handle. "Do you still think this is just a contract?" Anna asked, looking directly at him. He didn't answer. He just stared at the monitor, the sound of those beats echoing in his mind like war drums. There, for the first time, Mark saw something he couldn't control. On the way out of the clinic, the car glided through the streets as the silence between them screamed. "Are you all right?" he asked, without looking away from the window. Anna was slow to answer. "I don't know. I've never had anything. Now I have 3 hearts beating inside me. It's like carrying the universe." Mark nodded slowly. "I didn't expect that. Neither did I. But maybe this is fate forcing you to face the life you tried to avoid." He turned to her. "Do you really think there is such a thing as fate?" She smiled sadly. "I think that sometimes it puts us in front of something so much bigger than us that we just have to accept it." The car stopped in front of the mansion. Mark got out first, opened the door for her, and helped her out with a subtle, almost shy gesture. When their eyes met for a brief second, there was something different there. It wasn't passion, it wasn't affection, it was the recognition that something bigger was happening, despite any signed contract. "Let's get this right," Mark said. Anna nodded, her eyes still watery. "They deserve it," she replied. Anna woke up with a strange weight on her chest. Her pregnancy had been progressing safely for weeks, but that morning her body felt more fragile. When she tried to get up, a strong dizziness made her fall back onto the bed. Her breathing became short. The room, once silent, now seemed to spin. Stephanie, the employee closest to her at the mansion, entered with breakfast. One look was all it took for her to put the tray aside and run to the bed. "I'll call Mr. Mark now." No need. It's probably just tiredness." But Stephanie was already hurrying out. A few minutes later, Mark came in. He wasn't wearing a jacket, his hair was a little messy, a detail that in someone so meticulous said a lot. "What's wrong?" Anna tried to smile, but her sweaty forehead gave her away. "I just felt a bit dizzy. It's probably normal." "Isn't it?" Without answering, Mark came over, knelt beside the bed and touched her forehead with the back of his hand. The gesture was strange, intimate, almost human. "You're not well," she sighed. "I'm pregnant with 3 human beings. I think that gives me the right to a bad day. I'm not going to argue with you, but I'm not going to leave you like this either." Before she could protest, Mark wrapped his arms around her and lifted her carefully. Anna was surprised, not just by the gesture, but by how gently he did it. "Mark, I can walk." "Not today." On the way to the private clinic set up inside the mansion, Anna fell silent. The sound of his footsteps echoed down the corridor like a muffled melody. She felt her heart beating faster, not just from the fright, but from the unexpected closeness. In the examination room, the doctor reassured them both. "Everything's fine. Blood pressure a little low, which is common. Recommendation, strict bed rest for a few days." Mark nodded, but kept his eyes on Anna. When they returned to the bedroom, he helped her to lie down, arranged the pillows, and, in an even more unusual gesture, held her hand for a few seconds. She looked at him in surprise. "You're scaring me." "I'm scared too." Anna smiled tiredly. "You talk as if you care." He hesitated. "If I touch you, the contract dies." "What if it's already dead?" Mark didn't answer. He stood up slowly and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned around. "If you need me, don't call Stephanie. Call for me." The door closed slowly. Anna stood there, the echo of his words vibrating in her chest. For the first time since it all began, she didn't feel alone, and perhaps Mark wasn't so alone either. The room was bathed in soft light as Anna began to pack her things. Her hands trembled as she carefully folded each item of clothing, as if this gesture could delay the inevitable. The contract was clear. 90 days after the babies were born, she had to leave, and that deadline would come in a few hours. The triplets slept in their lined cribs, wrapped in white blankets. She moved closer, stroked each one's little face, memorizing the features, the sound of breathing, the warmth. She wanted to memorize everything. Because, even if she didn't want to, she knew she was leaving pieces of herself behind. The door opened. Mark walked in silently. He watched the scene for a moment before speaking. "Have you really made up your mind?" "It's in the contract, remember?" She replied without looking at him. He moved closer, his eyes fixed on the cribs. "We could renegotiate." Anna turned around slowly. "Negotiate love now, Mark? After everything? It's not love I'm offering." "Then what is it?" He hesitated. For the first time, he didn't have a ready answer. He walked over to the dresser, opened a drawer, and took out the original contract. He handed it to her. "What's this?" "The end of it all." Before she could react, Mark began tearing up the document, sheet by sheet, throwing the pieces on the floor. Anna stood motionless, her heart racing. "Are you crazy?" "Maybe. Or maybe I woke up too late. But I can't let you go like this. Mark, you can't just undo what we've lived through with a dramatic gesture. It's not just a gesture, it's a request, a shout." She took a step back. "Are you doing this out of guilt?" "I'm doing it because you taught me to feel again." Anna covered her face with her hands. Tears began to fall. "You can't say that now, not like this. Not when I've spent 3 months trying not to get attached, trying to be strong, getting ready to leave." He came closer, held her wrists lightly, lowering her hands. "Then don't go. Stay. Even if you don't love me. Stay for them. For you. For me, if you ever can." She looked at him with watery eyes. Her voice came out as a whisper. "I already do. And that's what scares me." Mark hugged her. For the first time, without calculation, without defense. A simple gesture, but loaded with everything that had been suffocated for months. The babies began to cry in chorus, as if they could feel the vibration in the air. Anna laughed through her tears. "They don't want me to go." "Neither do I," he replied. She leaned her head on his shoulder, her eyes closed, taking a deep breath. The end of the contract wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something real, something without clauses, something that scared them, but that they could finally call home. The airport was covered in a light mist as Anna passed through the main gate, pushing a small suitcase. Her steps were unhurried, but her heart was pounding. Even though Mark had torn up the contract, the pain of parting weighed heavily on her. In front of her, an unknown world. Behind her, everything she had never imagined she would have. She paused for a moment, looking at the boarding sign. The name of the destination flashed on the electronic display. A fresh start or an escape? "Do you think you can just walk away?" The voice echoed loudly in the lobby. Anna turned around slowly. Mark was standing there with the triplets in his arms, wrapped in colorful blankets. People around stopped to stare, but he didn't care. He just looked at her. "Mark, what are you doing here?" "You taught me what the world hasn't taught me in billions. And yet you were leaving." She swallowed. "I thought it was the right thing to do. And this here." He lifts the babies a little. "Aren't they right enough?" She moved closer, touched one of the tiny hands lightly. I didn't think there was any more room for me." Mark took a step forward, reducing the distance between them. His dark eyes were now vulnerable, stripped of their usual coldness. "Stay, not for them, for us." Anna took a second to reply. Then she lowered her eyes and smiled, tears forming slowly. "I never left, Mark, not for a second." He handed one of the babies into her arms, and she held it as if it were her own heart. The airport concourse disappeared. There were no flights, no destinations, just that scene. Back at the mansion, weeks later, laughter fills the corridors. The routine is different now. Breastfeeding, crying, first words. Between each interval, glances exchanged, silences shared. On the balcony, on a golden afternoon, Mark watched Anna with the children on her lap. He approached her slowly and sat down next to her. "You know what still scares me?" she said. without taking her eyes off the little ones. What? How we almost lost each other because of fear. Mark touched her hand, but we didn't, because you stayed, because I had the courage to go after it. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and there they stayed, lulled by the sound of 3 hearts growing. It was no longer about a contract nor about control. It was about love, the kind that defies certainties and transforms even the coldest of men. Mark whispered, "Will you marry me, Anna?" She smiled. "I don't want a paper wedding. I want a lifetime. Then we'll have that." And in that instant, between the past that no longer mattered and the future that was dawning before them, they knew they were finally home.